We will now take questions from the floor. Please raise your hand if you have questions. Our colleagues will pass you the microphone. When you speak, please start by telling us who you are and which university you are from.
Well, before we do that, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to all the panel chair and panel member for their brilliant talk. Although they're very short, I asked you to make it brief, but certainly you're doing very brief with a lot of substance. Thank you so much. So, because thank you. I'm sure all the audience agree. So I think we have good time now. So if the panel member, you still have something you don't have time to say earlier, you could take this opportunity to say again. But as the MC already announced, we would like all the participants to raise questions. You could direct your question in general to everyone, or you could direct your question to a specific speaker relating to the nature of your questions. So we hope that if you have anything you want to ask about the selection process or any queries, any suggestion, please feel free to do so. Thank you. Anyone start? Oh yeah, I saw a hand there. We'll pass you a microphone.
Hello, my name is Zhou Ye. I'm from HKU. I have a question for Professor Liu about CIF. I applied for Young CIF this year, but it's very diverse, right? The topics are very different. So how do you judge it from so many diverse fields? Because we don't have panels in CRF. I'm from, my field is biomedical engineering, for example, and then I compete with somebody doing robotics, doing, AI or different fields, right? How you judge it from so many diverse fields? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. If it is interdisciplinary, that's what we're looking for. You have the option to specify what panel you want to go into. Say, I want to go engineering with physical science, or engineering with humanity and social science, or engineering with biology and medicine, or physical science. Right? You can have option to do that. Now, there are keywords for each of this one. You can lay it down there. But the thing would be, don't lay down too many keywords, so that then it's very hard for us to do it. And then when we come to RGC, we look at the abstract. We also look at the thing we're going to give it to the corresponding panel chair to go through to see if that belongs to this two disciplinary or something. Okay? So it's a very, very clear message to the panel or the panel chairs to give up the qualified reviewers to reviews, right? So anybody want to comment on this? Be my guest on it. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, other panel member could feel free to reply or comment on these questions. Any comment? Okay.
I would just say that one of the great challenges of assessing interdisciplinary research is exactly the problem that you say, and that in fact the experience of the panel is such that perhaps with hindsight and with experience that we are able to make those comparisons.
Do you mean that even for CIF you have different panels, or you just have one combined panel with experts from different fields?
Well, we have 5 panels here, right? Mm-hmm. And each panel has a number of members with different expertise to look at the proposals, right? So that is go back to what I said earlier. You have to be clear to say what. That is a key point. If you don't spell clearly what your topic is, that might be your fault.
And when you select the CIF or Young CIF, do you have a specific a success rate, or you just judge it by the quality of the proposal?
Professor Fan would like to add something.
I was gonna maybe comment on your first question, but you're already on your second question, so that's okay. My understanding is that each proposal would have three reviewers, three readers, right?
Three readers.
Yeah, and so Professor Liu would actually determine which of the three readers, and the three readers can be drawn from different panels. So you're right, there isn't a specific panel for the entire scheme, but each proposal would have their respective set of readers, and they can be from, you know, sociology, engineering, and that's precisely why this is interdisciplinary. Okay.
So maybe I want to focus on your statement. What is the most important message for us to assign to which panel? And then a panel will assign to different readers. The readers can be from, say, two from one panel, one from the other panel. And then each panel member will select reviewers. So you have a very large, broad nest of experts to review a proposal. But the message is from the proposal. We base on a proposal, tell us what should we go to, who should we find as an external reviewer. So we talk about three readers, and you probably has up to 10 reviewers actually. We submit about 10 external reviewers to read a proposal. Now, not all 10 will come back, but sometimes you're surprised. We get to about 6 or 7, reviewer come back. So I think it's a very, very well organized and well thought out review process, at least compared to the US. How about it?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, I saw a hand at the center of the hall.
Yes.
Can we pass a microphone to you? Oh, so, sorry, you're the next one. The first one is at the back. So please give the microphone to this gentleman later. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Janice Pan. I'm from Hong Kong Baptist University. So first of all, I'd like to thank the RGC for supporting our research, like many of the panelists mentioned, for supporting very good research conducted in Hong Kong. Thank you very much. I have two questions, if I may. The first one is more general. Actually, it's in echoing the keyword mentioned by some of the members earlier, impact. So I'd like to know a little bit more about, if possible, the definition of, or if there are any kind of clearer guidelines, rubrics, or measurable criteria on impact, and if the impact of GRF is the same as RAE, since we're working on the RAE preparation now. So that's the first question. And the second question is more specific about GRF-sponsored PhD students, because we are given the choice of writing in potential PhD students into the GRF proposals. So what kind of criteria will be considered? Because normally we know GRF usually run for 2 to 3 years, but usually a PhD student needs sponsorship for 3 to 4 years. So does it mean that we can consider longer-term GRF proposal to include the training of a PhD student, which need training for at least 3 to 4 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Any members want to respond?
Jonathan, you may be able to answer the second question to start with, because there are a lot of...
Jonathan's there.
There's another Jonathan. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. John.
So with regard to the PhD students?
Yeah.
Well, I can share with you this. I mean, this is kind of a universal problem. We have the same issue in the US, in that funding is typically from 1 to 3 years on grants. PhD tenure duration is 4 to 5 years typically. Often what happens is that you put a student on a grant, that grant comes to an end, but then when you get your next grant, they are the first in line to be put in place. And generally speaking, grants will be in the same thematic area as your own area of expertise. So that would be kind of my naive response. I assume that the same mechanism would work here in Hong Kong, but would welcome alternate thoughts.
Okay, in relation to the first question, what is the impact? Okay, so I would ask us again would be, it depends on you. Because this is your proposal, and I always like to tell my team members would be what and why. So once you define your what and you know why, and that's a broader impact. So you define it for me. But then whether we would say this is a great impact or not is very personal. But there's one aspect that impact is relevant to Hong Kong. That's a question we always ask. So that might be one way to help you answer the question. What's the impact? Right? Impact is very hard to define. You might have impact, say 10 years from now, or you have immediate impact. So again, the word impact is something that you help us to clarify what is the impact, in what sense, right? So I think that is something that we need to think a little more about. There's certain immediate impact that you can see in engineering, definitely would, right? But in some other area, I'm not sure. You want to comment?
Yes, I think the key is that you should be defining a pathway to impact. And so you're right to talk about different timescales, and you have short, medium, and longer term. And actually you might have short-term impacts which are quite high, and similarly the pathway to impact, which might be, for example, in a new lead compound for drug discovery, might actually be a very long pathway, but actually defining how you anticipate beyond the grant, or even during the grant, how you're going to take that journey, I think is the key. Now, I think I gave some examples, but the impacts go beyond academia, and they are concerned with engagement, and engagement with different groupings of people, whether it's public or policy or government, engagement in informing industry upon standards, for example. Then the more obvious impacts around perhaps spin-out, commercialization, filing of IP, and licensing are all in that mix somewhere as well.
One thing I can for sure would be not the number of papers or reports.
Yeah, so can I add? Sure. So when you talk about impact, right, so one way to think about it is just imagine that you have already completed your project today, already, and then you can start to think about what are the implications, of of your project. So one way to think about it is what's the impact to your immediate field, and what's the impact to more general disciplines, and then of course you can relate to the scientific impact or the direct result to your field to social and economical values, right?
I believe that you also asked about the relationship with RAE. Okay, so research assessment exercise. I don't think I have an answer to that question, though. In one of the sessions today, in group 2, one of the panelists actually suggested that we abolish the pathway to impact statement, so very radical suggestion. But then the response to that suggestion was we can't because RAE needs that. Okay, is that accurate? I'm asking RGC. Yeah, so for the ROE exercise to operate, to function, do you need the impact statement from the RGC grant proposals? Okay. Okay.
Okay, to close this question about impact, because it's a very important thing, I'd like to ask Professor Iwa Chung, because he's the one who created something called the Research Impact Funds. So the word impact is there, so maybe you can clarify a little bit on it.
It's 3:30 a.m. in Chicago, which is the time I'm on.
That's a good impact.
I think if you look at the dictionary, you can probably figure out what that means. I think impact has actually multiple levels. If you are in, say, in physical science, it has to have some impact on the technical field itself. But in some cases, it also has to do with a broad thinking of how you might change the way we think about the disciplinary subject you're working on. And of course, in the Research Impact Fund, we also talk about impact on community. Not just when I say community, I don't mean the technical, but also social, economic, local, Greater Bay Area, national, and international. So I think it has a very broad stroke in terms of impact. It's one of those things is that you know it when you see it, right? So,
Seeing is believing.
Okay, I think the word impact has a lot of impact to our research. So we have quite a lengthy discussion, and then we could move on.
Could I just say one thing about the
so we see the impact is really big.
No, it's not about impact, it's about the RAE. So I'm speaking from a UK perspective here. And we had the research assessment exercise. We now call it REF, which is Research Excellence Framework. And we introduced the impact statements 2 cycles ago. And I sat on the engineering panel in 2014, and then 2021 I was the vice chair for engineering panel. And actually the journey that the academic community had been on in that period was quite remarkable. And the quality of impact statements, I think, was really a vindication and a validation of the desire to see and to assess the impact that comes from research.
Thank you, Professor Cooper. So any other, we saw a hand in the center. Can you pass the microphone? Who's next? Okay, the next, okay, please.
Okay, my name is Shen Hao. I'm from CHK. So I would like to ask Professor Raymond Ken. Basically, I want to ask even actually a general question also. Basically, is where a panel chair will consider like have a balance in terms of success rate of the different fields. Because I ask this question is because our field actually encounter the difficulty these days.
Which field you are in?
Huh?
Which field you are in?
Yeah, I'm in the consumer behavior field. Okay. So in the past 2 years, and Hong Kong U, UST, and CHK, we 3 institutions, we actually have a meeting together. So we found that our success rate is lower than 10%. So compared to business school as a whole, is more than 50%. And yeah, so that's the reason I was thinking about like when we doing this thing is any kind of balance of the success rate so that any field can still have money to survive, can have money to research. Okay.
Thank you. Actually, we have quite a lengthy discussion earlier today about not just in marketing, I guess you are in marketing, but also in organization behavior. That is the difference in terms of success rate between quantitative marketing versus consumer marketing, or maybe in other fields as well. That behavioral side seems to be having a little more difficulty in getting funded. That is also not just true in funding exercise, but also true in top journal publication as well. So first of all, I would love to have that statistics. The problem is in our subject matter marketing, when you submit the marketing proposal, there's no subdivision on whether this is behavioral or quantitative. So we won't be able to have the statistics that would tell us whether this is what is a success way of behavioral versus quantitative. But I take your word as the truth, that indeed there's going to be a smaller number of proposals or lower percentage of behavioral marketing proposals that are going to be funded. My recollection for this year's exercise, there will be more of those that will be funded. We brought in also panel members that are in the behavioral marketing. We actually have 2 members this year. So there may be more sympathy to those proposals. But I also have a difficulty in terms of what it means by fairness. Because even though we have that statistics, do we really want or should we really have same success rate across every single subfield of every field? And I don't know the answer to that. We certainly, if there's going to be on the panel side, there's biases, whether it's implicit or explicit, that is biased against behavioral marketing, we would like to correct that. But at the end of the day, it's not the same for every field, even in accounting, in finance, there will be differences across subfields in for example, certain subfields like financial econometrics would have generally lower percentage of those papers published in top journals. So there's going to be situations that we need to deal with as a researcher, that sometimes the field that you are in are not that popular and harder to get funding. But there's nothing we can do to correct that. We certainly cannot say every field has to be the same success rate. I think that's also not fair in some sense, because that seems to maybe the wrong thing to say, a communist system. But I don't have the answer for that, to be honest. But if there's going to be biases that the panel has going forward, I would like to see corrected. And I'm bringing in also behavioral marketing people. And after this year, if you continue to feel this is the case that you are biased against, then please let us know. And we will investigate further on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think I really agree that we will not be the same. Of course, the competition. The reason I ask is because we think it's a little bit too extreme, because like we have 22 members working across these 3 institutions, Hong Kong UST and CHK. Last year only get 1 proposal funded. So that makes us we cannot really do research anymore, right? So that's the reason I hope has some adjustment then. But I also, because some other institutions, we actually want to communicate, but we do not know what channel we can use to communicate, because yeah, that's the reason. Thank you.
But after this exercise, let me know again whether that continues to be the case.
Thank you. Any other questions? I saw this hand with a gentleman for a long time. Can you pass the mic to him? In the center, with a yellow coat. Yeah, right.
We have heard during this afternoon that, unfortunately, the financial resources are limited, right? So there is, and we have also heard that the quality of the proposals have improved. So we have on one side candidates who are being better and the financial resources to support them being limited. That's a fact. How much more the financial resources will grow, I don't know. I would be surprised if they grow at the same rate at which the quality of the proposals are growing. So the question for the three gentlemen on the right side, for John, Raymond, and Professor Chen, how do you think we could use the significant experience and background that all these experts bring from different places in the world to have a parallel or a complementary conversation about strategy? What I think there is a lot of brain power, a lot of expertise in all these people that come from over the world to have a complementary conversation about what is strategy, what other means we could create to support all this talent in Hong Kong. We don't need to be very smart to figure out that if the financial resources could not be increased at the same rate at which the talent is growing, something will give up, right? And then we may have some researchers who may not want to apply, right? So that will be the worst case scenario. So to summarize, what is your opinion? How do you think we could use some of the expertise that come from all over the world to have a complementary strategic conversation about how we could address that fact that the resources, financial resources, are limited?
Thank you for the question. So, well, I don't know whether my answers is particularly to your question, but maybe it answers some aspect of your question. So I wanted to comment on the success rate, at least for our panel. So the success rate. So I'm on the panel for 4 years. The success rate has been consistently in the mid-20s. And so I came from the US, so I look at the success rate for NSF, National Science Foundation, or NIH R01s. So for NSF, the current success rate is at the low teens. And for R01, you probably have to be below the 15th percentile to have a guaranteed funding. And then based on my own experience, so if you look at a stack of proposals, I think probably 25% is a pretty good cutoff. And after that, the quality of grant will go down dramatically. So I think in terms of the funding rate here, I think it's quite appropriate. So the point I made earlier was specifically for young investigators, because in the US, the young investigators are given a higher percentage rate. So I really feel that the young investigators, after they're hired, they deserve to have the funding to start, to really work on their new ideas. And as we know that being in research for so many years, the new ideas actually coming from doing. So if you don't even give them an opportunity early on, I don't think that really served for this serves well for the whole system. But in terms of the overall funding rate, I think it's quite appropriate.
I don't know if your question is about lack of funding. I also have the same opinion as Professor Chen that the funding in Hong Kong is quite adequate for both the junior as well as for senior faculty. Especially over the last couple of years, the amount of funding has gone up, and in particular in business panel, our success rate has also gone up. Compared with where I came from, which is Canada, I think the funding in Hong Kong is actually quite more generous. Obviously, ideal case would be everyone who asks for money will get money. But then from the point of view of the society, from the point of view of the government, you get to a certain point, you get diminishing return from those investments. So I don't know if we would like to advocate for higher success rate. having more money, actually, I would like to fund bigger projects that would make bigger impact. But I really do not see a serious problem with adequacy of funding in Hong Kong. But I could be totally wrong. So because I am not applying, so I have a different perspective. So, but maybe John could say something about this.
Well, I'll offer some thoughts, and Julio, this might get you and me into a fist fight in the bus on the way back, but I'll state my perspective. The first reality is there are financial constraints. That's the bottom line. The UGC is generous. They provide the funding, but there are limits, and we have to make decisions, and very difficult ones. And typically and historically, there are far more proposals, all of them willing in some way, shape, or form to be funded, but we can't do that. So our job is to be able to make that decision. Now, with regard to your comment about the strategy, interpreted, that could be perceived as, can we identify high priority areas that ought to be preferentially or favorably funded towards some common goal, to be determined what that is? I would argue that that is foundationally and fundamentally a very different approach to how we do things now. As it stands, the topics, if you will, are dictated solely and exclusively by the relative merit of each individual proposal, and then the themes come out at the end after they're ranked based on their individual merit. To decree ahead of time, a priori, that there are going to be thematic areas that we're to target, number one, that would have to be dictated at a very high level by the UGC itself and some other group of people that determine what that is. And then we would have to target that and then make decisions appropriately with weights given accordingly. That would be a fundamentally different way that we do business. Neither better or worse necessarily, but very different than what we do now. So I think it's an apples and oranges comparison.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, I saw a hand on the right and then another hand on the left. So we keep the hand.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nancy Chen. I'm Associate Dean of Business Faculty, Lina University. Colleagues and the friends who cannot be here today asked me to deliver some messages here. So I better get my job done, right? So the first message is we do appreciate Hong Kong has an RGC under Professor Wang's leadership, and the RGC does have very efficient and generous grant application systems with so many, professional panel members to help us improve our research quality. So thank you very much. This is the first message, and the second one is
now here comes the top one.
Every year, if you apply for a job grant, you need to report and input or your grant records manually, correct? However, the next year, only GRF grant records can be restored into the new application. So we still need to spend a lot of time and effort to key in all our grant records, word by word. So is it possible that RGC upgrade the application system to solve this problem?
Good, this is not my question.
Thank you. Yeah, so we hope, the next round start in November, we don't need to key in them again. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think our colleague hear that and they will consider.
Thank you very much. And the third message I need to deliver is we realize that RGC has a huge pool of, hardworking panel members and a huge pool of reviewers to review our grant application. However, each year, colleagues occasionally see a couple of unprofessional comments. So is it possible that RGC or panel chairs and members screen and filter outliers from the system?
Nancy, I'm in the business panel, so I understand there are external reviewers sometimes that is just out for lunch, that is not doing their job. And we do have a system that we can blacklist external reviewers, and I personally have. When I see someone who just come in and just say a few words and make $180 from us, then I'm going to blacklist him. So of course, there's going to be constant supply of those, but we will eliminate as we see fit. But hopefully, this is something that I would say a random draw that would affect almost every university, every applications. But we do, I think, if we see reviews come in that are totally unprofessional, we will discount them, we will blacklist them. So I think hopefully that impact on the success or failure of a proposal will not be dictated by those poor reviewers.
Thank you so much. I will let colleagues know. Thank you.
Yes, so your observation, I think, probably it's applicable to more than the business panel. And for the humanities and social science panels, we've also had a discussion about that. So I think the mechanism is one where, as first reader, you can, after external reviewer has completed their report, you can actually, check a box, whether you think that person should be invited back or not, right? And also we learned that. And of course, the panel members, they read not only their rating, but also read the text, read the narrative, right? And we also learned that it is in the capacity of the panel if they want to discard a particular report, a particular external review report, meaning that it basically just dropped, right, from the actual pool, from the reviews for that particular proposal. We have seen very rarely, but we have seen some unprofessional reviews and some nasty comments made, and we do not want those nasty comments to reach the PI because it's doing them no good. So that's a mechanism that I think we can use. We can just discard. We don't use it lightly, but it's possible.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to comment on one aspect, would be reporting. So during the visit with the members, and also for a lot of readers and reviewers, actually say that would be the amount of work that's loaded on the PI to write the report is tremendous. That's what I'm told. Not just today, but other times as well. So I think this is a valid point, that they spend so much time on it, they make a big report that thick, the reviewer might not be even read them. So I think we should have discussions on how to make it more effective to write a report that's useful, as well as that the reviewer enjoy reading the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The last question.
Oh.
The last comments, okay. It's not uncommon that some professors get a draft grant every year and are running 3 drafts on top of other projects at the same time. So the projects some colleagues are running at the same time could be a dozen. So should GIF consider the cap of numbers of GIF and other RGC-funded projects to ensure the quality? Thank you. This is the last one.
I guess I am the business panel, so you want Professor Wang to this is, of course, policy of GRF, policy of UGC or RGC, whether we should cap number of grants. I do think personally that people apply too often. I think university and departments, they give a lot of pressures to faculty to apply. Because eventually it will affect the funding of the university. But capping the number of grants that a person can apply within, say, for example, a number of years, is not capping the success. And I don't think that would make a lot of sense. Obviously, there are people who are very good at writing grants, and they have perfected their skill. But we shouldn't penalize them for being good, I think. So unless RGC would like to change the system and discourage people from submitting proposal too often. I think it would be difficult for me, at least from my point of view, to implement a policy like that.
Thank you, Professor Khan.
Thank you.
Okay,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we have only a few more minutes before this session ends, so we'll now take the final question from the floor.
Well, we still have about 10 minutes. we have to finish by 5, okay? 5 o'clock. So continue, because this is a rare chance for us to exchange, okay? Please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, panel chairs. This is my very great opportunity to meet you guys and also ask my question. I will keep mine as short as possible. My name is Vincent Zhang from Hong Kong U, and also my area is in marketing. I'm an assistant professor, by the way. So I joined Hong Kong U. This is my second year there. In my first year, I applied for the ECS scheme, and also successfully, I got it. Then for this year, I didn't get a chance applying for the GRS yet, because on day one, my colleagues and also even my department chair warned me that, Vincent, be careful because the GRS could be even more difficult, so think twice before applying it. So my question for you guys is, well, given the larger pool for GRS, of course, the success rate will be much lower, but do you see any disparity in terms of the quality of the proposals between the ECS scheme and also the GRS? And this is my first question. The second question is, so as a young or rookie scholar, so I would like to seek your advice to gradually transition from a ECS winner to a GRS winner. These are my two questions. Thank you.
So
Thank you,
again, I'm a business panel chair, so I can answer the questions. First of all, is there differences in the quality between the ECS and GRF proposals? And certainly there's some differences. The ECS proposals are for junior faculty who has no experience, no publications, and generally haven't written the grants before, so you can see the differences in the quality. How to transition? I guess you are going to compete with a different group of researchers. So the only way that you could be successful is to make your proposal as polished as possible and try to publish as many papers, because track record also matters to some extent, although we judge the proposal based on its merits, but the external reviewer sometimes will look at your publication record because, but I think success rate, I think in terms, another question is success rate, it fluctuates from year to year. Some year one is higher than the other, some year is the other way, but there's no systematic differences there. The intention of the business panel is to fund, to help the ECS, help the junior faculty as much as possible because we know they need extra help. I hope I answered all your questions.
Okay, we could have one or two quick questions, very quick. Okay, I saw the hand here and then the hand there. So that would probably be the last one.
Steve Newman from the University of Bath. I just wanted to point out that in the UK, that any investigator that is assigned to a project has to put the number of hours against that project. Mm-hmm. Those hours are actually logged by the EPSRC. So if you've put 8 hours against it, or you've got 3 projects where you've put 40 hours against it, you are not able to do extra projects. So there's a certain number of hours per week, and I would suggest it would be a really good practice if you could log the number of hours that academics have against a particular, all their projects. So if they've got SRFS, if they've got PhD supervision, this would be a way forward to make sure that you've got the right number of, you're not allowing a member of staff to work 80 hours a week.
Thank you, noted. You have any response to this one, or we invite the last gentleman? Here, yeah. Yeah, time.
I just want to mention something in regard to your question before. If my memory serves me, when you apply for a GRF, you don't submit your complete CV. You submit 2 pages CV in which you need to put your 5 most representative publications. this levels a lot the field between you and your most senior colleagues. Because if you ask an old person, send me your complete CVs, there will be easily hundreds of publications, participations in zillions of conferences as invited speaker and so on and so forth. But on a 2-page CV with only 5 publications, the differences between you and your more senior peers get drastically reduced. You're welcome.
Okay, so I think we have all the questions asked. I know there are many questions you want to ask, but we have a limited time, just like we have a limited amount for all the grants. We could not fund all. Okay, I'd like to thank you very much for attending this RGC forum. And I think we have a very fruitful and very effective exchanges. And also I'd like to thank all the panel members. They have given very insightful and useful comment and answer to all these questions. So thank you very much for attending the RGC funding. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank all of you for coming. I believe you have a fruitful exchange of ideas during the forum today. I would also like to thank the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology for organizing the visit, for the members of RGC and subject panels, and their staff for their logistics support.